Surprising no one, Julio Rodriguez is in the home run derby. And last night in the Bronx, the Mariners held their own home run derby. Plus, a report has linked the Mariners and Cardinals as potential trade partners. What could it mean? All that and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, June 23rd, 2023. This is signing Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb and they'll throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. And on the show today, our thoughts on the Mariners' 10-2 win over the Yankees and some news about All-Star Week, including the big news about Julio Rodriguez. But first, Colby, chill season approaching? Maybe, potentially. John Morosi last night tweeted, the Mariners have young pitchers, the Cardinals have young hitters. Sources say they have had dialogue about trade concepts at various points in the last year. And to be clear, the talks have not progressed, but the fit is obvious, so let's stay tuned. This, to me, Colby, is a giant nothing burger.
Yep.
But we should say that this past offseason, John Morosi said something very similar about Teo Hernandez and the Mariners. And then it happened like 3 days later. He said, they haven't talked about it, but it makes a lot of sense. And then there you go. It happened. We should also mention that John Morosi was at the Mariners-Yankees game last night. Maybe he talked to someone. Maybe someone let something slip. Who knows? But at face value, this is a nothing burger. That tweet tells us quite literally nothing, but maybe gives us a hint as to what may be on the horizon. And Colby, we have heard in the past that the Mariners have liked Paul DeJong, Cardinals shortstop. So he's not necessarily a young hitter, as Morosi described, but what do you think about the fit between these two teams? Who do you think he might be talking about here?
Well, first of all, this counts as a trade a day, so like it.
Sure.
But yeah, to me, the tweet is like textbook, like how to say something that'll get clicks, but will not in any way be held against you because it's so vague.
Sure.
The Mariners have talked to every single team about trade concepts over the last year at various points. Like it's such a just say, hey, you know what might make some sense? Seattle, St. Louis, there's some connection there. Boom, same thing. Here's what I imagine it is. I imagine the Mariners went to the Cardinals and said, let's talk about Lars Nootbaar. Nootbaar makes a lot of sense for Seattle. He's a good fit for the ballpark. He can play multiple spots in the outfield. Makes a ton of sense, and he's controllable, which we know Jerry likes. The Cardinals said, okay, let's talk about Logan Gilbert and George Kirby, and the Mariners said, LOL, goodbye, because Lars Nootbaar isn't worth either of those guys. Then the Mariners were like, how about Bryce Miller? And then the Cardinals came back and were like, how about Alec Burleson? And the Mariners went, LOL, goodbye, like they should, because Burleson is not a guy that the Mariners should have a lot of interest in, not for major league ready pitching. So while the Mariners have some young pitching, they don't have an excess of it. And that makes this a difficult kind of trade because the Mariners aren't going to be interested in Alec Burleson. They're not going to be interested in Dylan Carlson. Those guys have not hit at the major league level with any consistency. They're not going to be interested in those guys. They're going to want Lars Nootbaar. That is the guy that they want. They're going to want Nolan Gorman. They're going to want Jordan Walker, I guess. And the Cardinals, probably rightfully so, would say, then give us George Kirby, give us Logan Gilbert, give us Bryce Miller. The Mariners can't really do that. They can't afford to do that in season. Maybe this winter they could look at that, but even then, you're giving up control years of quality starting pitching for a bat, which may or may not be a fit. So I think that the Cardinals are like, do you want Alec Burleson? Do you want Dylan Carlson? Do you want Paul DeYoung, who we know the Mariners do have some interest in? Because that's the type of guy they're going to be willing to trade. And they're probably still asking for Brian Wu for all three of those guys. Is Brian Wu worth, any of those three bats? No. Brian Wu is worth more than that. So yeah, I don't see the fit, to be honest. You can get creative. Obviously, Jerry, very known for being creative, and there's 3-team deals and stuff like that. But I don't really see a fit unless we're talking about Emerson Hancock. And I just don't know what kind of bat Emerson Hancock is going to get you at this stage of his development. So
unless the Cardinals just really like Emerson Hancock,
which I guess is possible, but then are you going to it's probably Hancock for Burleson is probably like the deal that makes the most sense, but Burleson's like a DH only. So I don't know. I don't really see a great fit here, at least in terms of young pitcher for young hitter swap, unless the Cardinals are in fact willing to talk Jordan Walker or Lars Nootbaar.
Yeah, the whole notion that the Mariners should trade from their current rotation to me is silly because relying a lot on Marco being able to get back and stay healthy. That's
can be good.
Kind of ignoring the issue. I mean, like, you will be able to address this in the winter, but kind of ignoring the issue that is Robbie Ray and whenever he'll get back. And you're pretty much tapped out on these middle of the rotation prospects right now, depending on how you feel about Emerson Hancock. But Hancock to you, Colby, is like a number 4. I think that he's maybe a number 3, but probably a number 4.
I don't see it.
But other than that, Walter Ford, Michael Morales, any of those guys that might have that ceiling to be a middle of the rotation guy, they're far away.
Right. And the Cardinals are a team like the Mariners who don't want to rebuild. They want to reload for next year. So they're probably going to prioritize. If they're giving away a young major league hitter, they're going to want a young major league pitcher because that's what's fair. And that's what helps the Cardinals most in 2024. The Mariners are still fringy, vaguely in it for 2023. I mean, I guess you'd say solidly. I think they actually picked up a game on a couple. They washed with pretty much every team in front of them, despite losing 2 or 3 to the Yankees. So they're still in it. So they're looking for 2023 impact. Yeah. And if they're trading, guys who are going to impact beyond 2023, which all their young pitchers are, it's just not a clean fit like Morosi thinks it is, unless, again, like, could the Mariners trade like Bryce Miller and Emerson Hancock, or maybe like Tom, I don't know, right? Just whatever. Can they get like Jordan Montgomery and Lars Nootbaar, so that way you at least have a starter to go into your rotations for the rest of this year. Trading pitching, like quality major league pitching, which you have right now in season, is very difficult if you're a contender. You can do it in the winter because you can just go out and resign. You can go out and sign somebody, and you have time to go, fix your rotation if you trade from that strength. You can't really do that because, like, I think the guy like here that they're most likely to trade would probably be Brian Wu or Bryce Miller. Right? They're not going to trade Kirby or Gilbert, not this summer, unless they get good pitching back. So, like, how do you go get somebody who's better than Bryce Miller right now? How expensive is that going to be? Right. Very expensive.
Yeah, I think the best option here, if you had to pick out of anyone in the rotation, it would be Brian Wu, because you are going to have to shut him down, at least as far as pitching out of the rotation goes. Maybe you can still pitch out of the bullpen late in the season, but he's this is, this isn't saying much, but he's the most expendable of those guys to me, just because, again, he's not going to be able to impact your team out of the rotation in September and October, or definitely October at least. So if the Cardinals are interested in like Brian Wu as the headliner and then some, lottery tickets or maybe, a Lazaro Montes type of dude or something like that for Lars Nootbaar, then fine. But the thing that we also have to keep in mind here, and this is what we talked about when we talked about like Paul Goldschmidt during that Fan Fiction Friday a couple weeks ago, is that the Cardinals are run a lot like the Mariners, or rather the Mariners are run a lot like the Cardinals, because the Cardinals have been doing it for a longer time than they have. but they're going to want, especially considering the position that they're currently in, where they can't really afford to sell off all their pieces and just say rebuild. They need to at least see this out for one more year, or at least another half a season next year. They're going to want major league pieces back. So I don't know if Brian Wu and Lazaro Montez and a lottery ticket or two is actually going to be enough for the Cardinals. I think they might want, Wu and another major league piece, or a piece that's close to the majors. And, maybe you can get a reliever out of them. Maybe you can get Jordan Montgomery for half a year, depending on what else you're throwing in. But I don't think that there's a perfect solution here. But if they're talking, then that means that they might have some shape of what they want to do here. That makes sense. And like Colby said, Jerry is very creative. So we might think that we know what's up, but he always finds a way to surprise us in the end.
Yeah, it's just, I could see them maybe doing like Emerson Hancock for Paul DeYoung, who's got a couple years of club control left with options, and he's been okay this year. He could play short, he could play third, he could play second. I don't see guys like Brendan Donovan actually being available. Maybe Tommy Edman, but he's only got a few years left of club control. So I just don't see it. I see what Morosi is like speculating. Yes, the Mariners do have young pitching. Yes, the Cardinals do have, young bats, but the value still has to line up. And I just don't see it, particularly if the Mariners are trying to make something out of 2023. I think what's more likely is that they would say Paul DeYoung, Alec Burleson, whatever it is. I think those are the guys the Cardinals would want to move. And I think they're probably still asking for like Brian Wu, and that is an absolutely no-go for the Mariners. So something to keep an eye on, but it is not as clean of a fit as Morosi wants it to be, unless one of these teams is greatly valuing somebody a lot more than Ty and I are.
Yeah, I mean, the other maybe here is Tyler O'Neill, who's been on the 60-day IL with a back thing. He's been cleared to play catch as of last week, but he's still quite a ways off. I don't know if
you can get him for a bucket of baseballs, fine, but you have enough strikeout problems right now.
Yeah.
And O'Neill is, aside from the 1 year, has been a 3 true outcome guy essentially. So I just don't see a fit there, as much as I would love it.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't agree with the notion that the Mariners should trade from their rotation to get a bat. Because that gives you that gives you another problem and a much more expensive problem to address.
Right. Hypothetically, I know we got to run here, but hypothetically, if you have if Lars Nootbaar is a 120 WRC plus guy, but he's going to cost you Bryce Miller because Nootbaar has 4 years of club control or something like that, wouldn't it just make more sense to go trade Michael Morales for a 120 WRC plus guy who has a year and a half left? Why pay extra for the club control years when you're trying to impact this year and next year more than anything? It's just cheaper to go get a shorter term option who can put up similar-ish numbers to the long-term guy, and you get to keep your rotation, which is your strength. So I don't see it.
Yeah, if you're going to trade from your rotation, it makes more sense to do it in the offseason when you have more options available to you to address it and to supplement it. We'll see, though. We'll see what comes of this, if anything. But again, got to pay attention to Morosi maybe saying something like this, because a very similar thing happened with the Teo situation. So keep an eye on it for sure. All right. Well, Colby, as we all know, one game means everything. And the Mariners, clearly after last night, they don't even need to add any offense because they scored 10 runs at Yankee Stadium, which is something they were not able to do even close to that over the first 2 games of that series. But that's not the point here. We're going to talk about last night's game and Brian Wu, who pitched very well in last night's game in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to join today. From which team goes home happy to the result of the very first pitch, you can bet on everything with FanDuel. So don't miss your chance to snag a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball trademarks used with permission. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Mariners and Orioles getting underway tonight at Camden Yards. You can catch all the action on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. Real quick, before we hop into the Yankees series or the final game of the Yankees series, Colby, how many home runs is Adam Frazier hitting in this series? Be real with me.
1.
I'm putting the over under at 1.5.
I'll bet hard under.
All right. I mean, former Mariners, they've been haunting the M's a little bit this year. I just
really just Jake Bauers.
Frazier's been, hitting quite a few home runs, which is weird for him. But
so we got Colton Wong.
Right. Let's talk about Colton Wong.
Power hitting Colton Wong.
Yeah, he had a multi-hit night last
Did
night.
he?
The Mariners.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. The Mariners have 4 home runs. Ty France, Cal Raleigh, Teoscar Hernandez, and of course, Colton.
There we go.
And again, because, one game matters so much. It says everything that you need to know. Colton Wong is officially back.
He should be the everyday second baseman. Yep.
Clearly. Yep.
At the very least, he should be the everyday DH.
Sure. So let's talk about this offense from last night.
I'm only halfway joking.
I tweeted this last night that honestly, that game just made me more irritated about the first 2 games, because it's like I have a hard time buying that the outlier here was the first 2 games rather than the third game, because we've seen more of the first 2 games than we've seen of the third game out of this Mariners team.
Same old Mariners tie.
Right.
Dan Gonzalez.
Right. Yeah.
Just never happy. The Mariners scored 10 runs and it made me mad. Like, yep. Totally a healthy.
Because they didn't do it the way that I wanted.
Yeah, right. Totally a healthy, feeling. My team scored 10 and they won, but I'm mad about it. Yep. Totally reasonable.
I just wish that they scored more than 3 in the first 2 nights, but
they scored 13 in a 3-run series. That's pretty good.
They did outscore the Yankees by 4 in this series.
Yeah,
by the way,
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, kind of the good news about last night is that Cal Raleigh had a great game as well. He had 3 hard hit balls. Obviously, the home run, which a Yankee Stadium home run, but it doesn't take away from the fact that he absolutely crushed that ball. So yeah, that was good to see. He had 2 hits. Eugenio had 2 hits. He also walked twice. So that was fun to see. Teoscar Hernandez, who had just a really poor first couple of games of the series, he comes back out, goes 3 for 4. Hits the big home run, absolutely crushes it to right center field. That's a really good sign for Teoscar Hernandez, who we've already known is kind of coming out of this. And you could still, be busting out of a slump and go have an 0 for 8 run like that. You could still do both, right, at the same time. Yeah. And, even Julio, just, again, 1 for 5, but a couple hard hit balls. Just pretty much everybody up and down the lineup contributed, with the exception of Jared Kelenic, who had another rough game. His OPS is officially dipped below 800. And yeah, the Mariners are going to have to consider moving him down in the lineup 6, 7, or they're going to have to find a way to get him off his feet a little bit more, allow him the time to kind of make these adjustments, not on the fly. You're not benching him, but does he have to play 7 days a week? Can you find a way to make him play 5? That would be ideal while he tries to work through this thing. But overall, it was a really good night for the offense. Every starter had either a hit or an RBI. Every starter, with the exception of Jared Kelenic, had at least 1 hard hit ball. So yeah, it was a good night offensively. But obviously you have to like what you're seeing from Teo, who, by the way, very, very quietly is getting right back to where he was last year in terms of slash line. So yeah, it's a good sign. Obviously, Herman coming off of a really bad start. He was awful again last night, and we saw him in Seattle. Seattle was put up 4, I think, against him. So not the most difficult pitcher in the world, but it's pretty good stuff. And last night they just never gave him a chance to get solid footing. So overall, it's a very good night for the offense. You hope it continues, but it felt a lot more like the since June 6th team than the since June 20th team. So
Sure.
yeah, it was good to see it. And now good, because you're going to have to score runs in Baltimore early like they did in this game, because that bullpen is tough. That rotation, not so much. So score early. Don't try and score runs off of Cano and Tate. Is Tate healthy? I think he's still healthy. Yeah, score early and try and win these games. But last night was a really good. I don't know if it was a good sign, because obviously we have to see how they perform today and tomorrow, but it was a good feeling at the very least to just whoop up on somebody and see the offense really explode.
Teo right now up to 254, 299, 443. Last year he was 267, 316, 491. So like you mentioned, he's making that climb back up to where he was last year. 107 WRC plus now for Teoscar Hernandez through 73 games with the Mariners. So let's talk about Brian Wu, who we talked about a little bit there in the first segment as a potential trade chip. But Colby, since his really rough major league debut in Texas, he's been really strong and came through with a really nice performance at Yankee Stadium, making his Yankee Stadium debut. That's obviously a scenario that a lot of young guys can get the nerves, and it all kind of falls apart. Wu was great though. 5 1/3 innings pitched, just 2 hits allowed. He took a no-hitter into the 6th inning. 3 walks, which isn't great. 5 strikeouts. Just 3 hard hit balls though on the entire night for Wu. So what did you see out of Wu last night?
Fastballs for days. It was a lot of fastballs. Now he mixes in the 2-seamer and the 4-seamer. So yes, those are different pitches, but they are still fastballs. Over his last 3 outings since the blow up against Texas, 15 2/3 innings pitched, 21 strikeouts, just 4 walks, and 3 of those came yesterday. 2.30 ERA, 3.85 FIP. Opponents hitting 161, 217, 339 against him. Brian Wu, his last 3 times out, has pitched like a legitimate number 2 starter, minus getting deep into games, but that's a little more about protecting him and so yeah, Wu's been very good. He's been more than you could ever hope for, filling in for Marco, and it is a little bit unfortunate that he just set a new career high for innings pitched. So he's only got a handful of starts left before they're going to have to make a decision on sending him down or putting him in the bullpen. But last night was fun to watch. It was, like I said, it was 74 fastballs out of 93 pitches, 44 seamers, 34 sinkers or 2-seamers, and just like you said, no hard hit contact whatsoever. 38% whiff rate on the 4-seamer. That's pretty good. That for a 4-seam fastball, that is a very good rate. And the 2-seamer just continued to induce a lot of weak contact. It was a ton of strikes for Brian Wu. He just total command, and it certainly helped that the Mariners put 4 up in the first and then added 2 more each in the next few innings. It just really allowed him to be super aggressive with the fastball. And just, try and get some quick outs. And it was, what's interesting is Wu's spin rates last night were actually down, and his velocity was down a little bit. Nothing to be concerned about, but we've seen him have, better stuff, I guess, but he just really had good command of the fastball and sinker. And like I said, again, 8 whiffs on 21 swings against the 4-seamer. That is a very good rate. And we talked about this, after his last start, Brian Wu's fastball right now is probably better than Bryce Miller's, or at least as good. Just because of the deception that he's throwing it with right now, and because he has better command of it than Miller does. So Wu was fantastic, and it's great to see, and it is a little bit of a bummer that there's just no conceivable way that he's going to finish the year in the Mariners rotation. But it should be, obviously very exciting for the future. And, the Mariners have turned a 6th-round pick who only threw like 100 innings total in college, and everybody pegged as a reliever. It looks like they may have turned him into a legitimate mid-rotation starter.
Yeah, he looks pretty special right now. And, on top of the success of Bryce Miller, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, this Mariners pitching development staff continues to impress and to set the standard really in Major League Baseball right now. So hopefully the Mariners are able to ride this wave of momentum into a really tough series with the Baltimore Orioles, who are a fantastic team. One of my favorite teams to watch this year. You can catch all the action on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. So this morning, Julio Rodriguez became the first Major League player to commit to the 2023 Home Run Derby. Wow, what a surprise. What a surprise. Julio's going to participate in the Derby in Seattle. Whoa, didn't see that coming.
Let me show you my surprised face.
Yeah, that's like seeing Mario get revealed for Smash Brothers and being like, what? Yeah.
No way.
What? No way. So yeah, Julio's in the Derby. Last year, as we all know, he got robbed by a terrible, terrible home run derby system. Hopefully that doesn't happen again because he put on the best show in LA.
Hit 81
by far.
home runs.
Yeah, he was better than Juan Soto.
Juan Soto hit 55.
One round. Yeah.
Yeah, after Julio had to go and hit first because he didn't know how many home runs he needed. So Julio at that point had already banked more home runs than Juan Soto would hit in the entire derby. So we all know who really won the home run derby last year, and it really propelled Julio to kind of superstardom and in a way clinched the American League Rookie of the Year race. Cause I know it was unanimous, wasn't it? Or it was close to, but
the Blue Jays writer voted for Adley.
Yeah. All right. So almost near unanimous. But honestly, again, that race was a lot closer in terms of just stats. Adley had a legitimate case to win Rookie of the Year, even despite how great Julio was. But that derby just kind of sealed it. Like he put on the show. He was the talk of baseball for a few weeks. And the derby really kind of like solidified him as like a future star.
And the Mariners were the story of baseball going into that weekend.
Right, because they had won 14 in a row.
Yeah. So Julio just put an exclamation point on that. And then, of course, we get the little interaction between him and Liam Hendricks during the All-Star game, and and all that just continued to build, Julio's stardom in general. So so this is not a surprise. We all saw this coming. We'll see if he makes it on the All-Star team. I would assume yes, he's going to make the All-Star team. When do we find that out? When do we find that out?
Usually it's not until like a week before. Starters, I think, get announced in a week, and then like a week after that, it's usually the Sunday before the All-Star, not the Sunday before the All-Star game, but the Sunday before the final week leading up to the All-Star game is when they announce reserves, and then obviously, replacements will trickle in and stuff like that. And it's just hard to imagine with how many people get selected that they're not going to find a way to put Julio on an All-Star team in Seattle. It just, come on.
So we also today got word of who's going to be participating in the All-Star Celebrity Softball game, which is obviously something
MLB has said that is the first wave. I don't know what that means.
The first
surprises wave. Or if that just means like this is who's been invited and said they're coming, but I don't know. We'll see.
All right, so we'll hold judgment a little bit because obviously this is something that we care a lot about here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. This is all we care about at this point. So we've got some good inclusions here. Felix, obviously, Brett Boone, Mike Cameron, and then some Seattle ties with like Joel McHale and Zach Levine.
You guys don't know who Joel McHale is. He's Jeffrey from Community.
So outside of that, though, there's some questionable choices here.
Just it doesn't feel very Seattle to me.
Which I'm sure is the theme with all of these. I'm sure the Colorado one wasn't super Colorado themed either.
Sure, but Seattle gives more to the world than Colorado. Let's just be honest.
All right.
I mean, let's just call it what it is. Like
Colorado's out here catching strays.
Yeah, I mean, like, of course, Seattle dominates Denver. We all know this. Like, it's been proven repeatedly.
That is true.
And if the Sonics were still around, they would have knocked the Nuggets out of the conference finals. So you got lucky, Denver, is what I'm saying. But yeah, no, it just doesn't feel very Seattle to me. Like Joel McHale, okay, yes, Seattle. And obviously there's a couple of Seattle connections, sure. But it's like, does JoJo Siwa really need to play instead of like Bill Nye? Why is Donovan Mitchell here? Yeah,
Or the
I get
Miz.
it.
Like, why is the
Right.
Miz here?
You're trying to get people to watch, right? So you do want some people with national pull, but
Sure.
I don't think people who sorry, I don't think people who would watch the Celebrity All-Star game are actually watching for like they're gonna watch whoever's playing in it, right? Like that's just you're not attracting new people because like, oh, I want to see the Miz play. No, nobody on earth is saying that. People who are gonna watch the Celebrity Softball game are gonna watch it either way, like regardless of who's playing in it. So yeah, no, I just where's Bill Nye? Where is
Right.
just think of all the great artists. Like where's Duff McKagan? Like what are we doing? Like where are these guys? Or where's Kenny Mayne? Like
Where's Gary Payton?
yeah, like where are these? Where's Kelsey Plum? Like
where's
where
like a
are these
single
Seattle
Seahawk
athletes?
player?
Yeah, where's DK Metcalf?
Yeah.
Glad Russell's not coming, but yet.
Ugh.
He wouldn't risk getting booed, but
No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. No.
But yeah, I just to
Where's
me,
Gino? Like get Gino.
yeah,
in here.
absolutely Gino.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
Tyler
yeah.
Lockett. Like to me, there is a severe lack of Seattle connections on the squad. I want at least like half of the All-Star
Agreed.
Celebrity Softball game to be like obvious Seattle ties, and it just feels like there's like 6 of like the 20. Like that's not enough.
So it gets really weird though, this list, when you look at the other MLB All-Stars on here. Like Ryan Howard? Why is Ryan Howard here?
that one stuck out to me. I'm like,
why
really?
is Ryan Howard here?
I don't know.
Cool. I don't have anything against Ryan Howard. I like Ryan Howard.
He's like my 4th favorite character on The Office, but like
right.
And remember, Ryan Howard is actually on The Office.
Yeah, no, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, Adam Jones is hilarious to me. I love that, honestly.
So we have to talk about that. So Adam Jones is here.
Well, we're out of time, so make it fast.
And in the Futures game, coaching for one of the Futures game teams, Jeremy Reed, former failed Mariners top prospect, with like I mean, David Ortiz, but Adam Jones is up there in terms of like greatest players the Mariners have traded away for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
I like Adam Jones though. So like,
I do like Adam Jones. Don't get me
fine
wrong. But this feels like a conscious decision someone made to hurt me personally.
It's like, where's Eric Bedard, bullpen coach? I need it.
Yeah, like, dude, let's get Cliff Lee in here.
Sean Figgins.
Let's get Sean Figgins. Let's get Milton Bradley.
Like, oh, good Lord, no. Let's not. But Carlos Silva.
Maybe take that one back. But Carl Everett.
No, also no. But yeah, we'll see. But like again, they said first wave, so I'm hoping that there's like some late additions. But like, I wanted more Seattle like connection in this, because to me that's what it's for. It's for the fans. You're like, because you're not pulling in an extra 5 million people watching the Celebrity Softball game.
No.
It's for the people who are.
They don't even show it. They don't even show it live. It's pre-recorded. Yeah.
So like, just call it what it is. Like, just show it's for the fans. So let the fans get hype. Let Dan Wilson play. And again, I get you want some major celebrity draws. JoJo Siwa does not need to play in this game. Like,
real quick,
nobody's watching.
Real quick, who do we think is throwing out the first pitch at the All-Star game?
Of the All-Star game? Felix.
I was gonna say Cal Ripken.
Ooh, that'd be a great one. Yeah, because of the last All-Star. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, good call. Good call. Ripken would be really good. I feel like he still wanted Seattle connection though.
Well, I was just thinking if you're going to do someone who's not connected to Seattle but has one of the greatest baseball All-Star moments in Seattle history. Cal,
that'd be great. I'd really like that. I'd also say Ichiro, because he's such like a global brand, but he's also obviously representative of the Mariners.
That's who I think it will be. If it's someone tied to the Mariners, then Seattle, it's probably going to be Ichiro.
2001, the last time I was here, Ichiro played that game, win MVP. Ichiro's probably my favorite, but I do like the Cal Ripken call. I think that would be really cool.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez. It's DANEGNZLZ. And Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok as well over at Locked On Mariners. That's one word, Locked On Mariners. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Again, you can catch the Mariners and the Orioles on the Mariners hometown broadcast tonight, SiriusXM via the SXM app. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day and a beautiful baseball weekend, and we'll see you next time. Peace.